Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the What's New in Revit 2021 webinar. My name is Chrisia, and I'm an account manager here at SolidCAD. Today, we're going to hear from two of my colleagues, Patrick and Peter. But before we dive into the good stuff, I am going to have a quick chat a little bit about SolidCAD and what we do. SolidCAD is the largest Autodesk reseller in Canada, and we're also the only Autodesk Platinum partner. We work with many industries, which include, of course, AEC, but also plant, infrastructure, and manufacturing. We help design firms, constructors, and owners implement technology and optimize workflows. SolidCAD can help much beyond supplying software. Here are some of our offerings. We can provide everything from support and software training to a start-to-finish implementation. Not only are we partnered with Autodesk, but many others too. Companies such as Bluebeam, CTC Software, Matterport, Lumion, and many more. SolidCAD is also specialized in Autodesk's construction products, which include all of the BIM 360 family. SolidCAD is proud to be a Canadian-owned company. We have over 15 offices and 12 training facilities across Canada. And by the way, that doesn't include any of our new home offices that we are all working out of, as I'm sure lots of you still are. I want to talk a little bit about the types of training we offer. First is open enrollment. We offer many different courses and anybody can sign up. There is a full list of courses and a calendar with upcoming dates on our website. If you have been thinking about taking some training, we are currently offering an open enrollment at a COVID discount. Or if you're looking for something a little bit more tailored to your exact needs, we also offer custom training. Currently, we're able to offer both solutions I just spoke about online in a virtual environment. And if our clients are experiencing issues in working in a virtual or remote environment, SolidCAD has tools that can help with that. And here's our wonderful AEC sales team. Lots of great people across Canada. And oh, look, there I am. And our equally as wonderful tech team. Really great resources for you and your company. And double the points if you can spot Peter and Patrick. Now for the cheesy part. Like most big companies, we have lots of associations and sponsorships. Some I'm sure you recognize. Some of them are CanBIM, BIM Quebec, Toronto BIM Community, and the VRCA. I want to take a quick second to talk about our amazing support team. We have a dedicated group of technical support staff that are here to help. They're available from 9 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you're in Vancouver like me, that's 4:30 in the afternoon. And you can contact them via email or phone, and they can help with anything from installation issues to problems within the software itself. So please utilize them anytime something pops up. Service bundles. This is something new, actually. Our team has come together and created these service bundles for both BIM 360 and Bluebeam that come with a variety of tools, training, and services for one easy price. And last, I would just like to shout out a few of our clients. Maybe you see yourself up here. And that concludes my little spiel. Thank you again for joining us today. And now for the moment you've all been waiting for, I will pass it on to Patrick to get started with what's new in Revit 2021.
Perfect, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So as mentioned, my name is Patrick Siemek from SolidCAD Solutions. I'm a technical consultant for the BIM AEC team. And today what I'll be showing is what is new in Revit 2021. So the features that you're gonna see is not only what is new, but also some enhancements that have been added to the Revit 2021 environment from a range of MEP stuff, structural, and also architectural and just general for everyone to use. So when you install Revit 2021, you're going to get a dialog box. It's going to be an Ask Profile dialog that displays the first time you open Revit and after it's been installed. It's just going to present you a couple quick questions about your discipline and job role for which you use Revit for. Based off of those answers that you provide those questions, a user-created customized Revit interface is done for you. So again, it's a quick way of jumping into Revit already with certain commands that you are going to be using. Once those custom interfaces are created, you can always modify it, but as an initial starting point, it's going to give you a questionnaire, customize your interface, but then down the road, you could always customize it on your own and adding different tabs and different ways that the interface will look. A new thing to Revit 2021. Previously in Revit versions, you were able to bring in PDFs and images, but only as imports. Now in Revit 2021, you can link a PDF file or an image in a 2D view to use as a reference, to trace, or to use on a sheet as you create your model. Linking PDF files or images rather than importing may be more desirable when you are concerned about file size. You can move, copy, scale, rotate a linked PDF file as you would an imported PDF file or image. The updated PDF file or image is loaded when you open the model. Row stripping for schedules. So previously in Revit versions, there were kind of difficulties looking into a schedule, both in the actual schedule view and onto your sheets. There were some row stripping viewing options onto your schedule views themselves, but now in Revit 2021, what you can do is set the stripe rows feature to display rows in contrasting colors to make schedules easier to read. You can set alternate rows to display in contrasting colors to make it easier to follow rows in a wide schedule. Access the stripe row controls using the properties palette for a schedule. Shading and conditional formatting can override the striped row settings when they are applied to a schedule. So again, the row stripping is going to be used in the view itself, but also onto a sheet. So just a quick demonstration of how this works. With the door schedule already open, if we just go into the appearance portion in the properties, we now have the stripe rows. So by activating the stripe rows, you do have a couple more options. Do you stripe the first row or the second, and also the coloring. So if I just change the color here to be a lighter green. And what you also have is, do you want to have these striped rows to be visible onto your sheet or just into the schedule itself? So by applying these options, we can now have it easier to read our schedules within our views itself. But also if we go to a sheet, these schedules will also have that stripe row feature to it. So again, a nice great tool that was added to the Revit software. Enable view filters in a view. In previous Revit versions, you had to remove a filter from a view if you didn't want the effect. If you needed the filter back, you had to manually add it to the view. In Revit 2021, it made it all easier. Now you have the option to enable or disable a filter in a view without having to completely remove it. So example of this would be, a great one is from the MEP side. You have many filters that are being used to show things on and off and what types of, say, piping systems. So within this view, inside of your visibility and graphics, underneath the filters tab, we can now see with all these filters now applied inside of our view, we can then turn on and off if the filter is being enabled or disabled, along with the tools that it is using. So with these options, you can then easily start turning on and off different filters, applying them to your views. Visibilities, we could have them on. So right now with the sanitary, we have sanitary piping turned on. If you do not want that filter to be enabled, you could always turn it off and on also. So another great feature of using the new filter option tool. Real-time realistic views. In previous versions of Revit, realistic visual styles applied material appearances to elements in your model. In 2021, real-time realistic views applies material appearances and lighting effects to the views as you move through the model. At its core, realistic view style applies real-time rendering to a view. Rather than waiting for a view to render, you can now set the visual styles to realistic. Previous versions, you had a ray trace option which did take a lot of time and didn't really work too well. So now with this realistic view, you could quickly get your viewing options across. So a quick example of having the realistic view. So just simply setting your view to be realistic, no more ray traces available. And with your view now applied, you can easily and quickly change the properties of your different, say, lighting fixtures as an example. Applying those features, and as you can see, it instantly starts changing the graphical representation within your view itself. So again, different properties can be always changed to the view, applying it, and then you see the automatic updates to your view itself. So again, another great tool that you could use to have the quick realistic views. Slanted walls. Everyone's been asking for slanted walls. So in Revit 2021, users can create or modify a wall to make it slanted. Using the cross section and the angle from vertical parameter specifies the wall's angle from -90 to +90 degrees, where 0 degrees is vertical. Windows and doors in a slanted wall can be modified to follow the wall angle with the orientation wall instance parameter. Slanted walls are able to be used as architectural, structural, or curtain walls in your projects and can be edited in plan, elevation, section, 3D, orthographic, and perspective views. So a quick example of the slanted walls. Here we just have a couple walls in place, simply selecting the wall itself. And now you can see in the properties dialog box, we do have a new feature. So in here, you have the option to just have a vertical wall or a slanted wall, in which case I have here, and then providing the angle from vertical. And by typing in an angle, you can then see automatically the properties do change. Multiple walls can have those slanted wall features to them, and they will be joining them as you would with normal walls. If you start adding windows and doors, if I start adding a door into some of my areas or a window itself, initially they will not be slanted with the wall. Inside of the features now with the door and the windows, when selected, you do have an orientation. So depending on your wall angle, you change it to slanted, everything will then adjust itself accordingly based off of the wall's angle. Same thing will happen for your windows. And again, architectural, structural, and current walls do have this new feature associated with them. Create new standard 3D rebar shapes. So inside of Revit 21, you can now define 3D rebar shapes by rotating the hooks at the ends of the bars. This is considered also as an instance parameter. Place rebar within 3D rotated hooks or rotate the hooks of existing bars. The bar shape will be matched to an existing shape with similar rotation, or a new shape will be created at various hook rotation intervals. Freeform bars can also match to rebar shapes with 3D hooks, ensuring that fabrication data can be extracted for such bars. So again, this gives you a lot more options to instantly change the rebar hooks within an instance property, as opposed to having as a brand new type. Steel editing object enhancements. In Revit 2021, steel editing capabilities have been extended to allow more flexibility when modifying steel elements or connections. To change the shape of a plate, simply select it, press the edit boundary button, and stretch one of the plate's edges to the desired location. Bolt parameters such as quantity and intermediate distance are accessible through the properties palette, so you can make changes quickly. You can now also edit simple or complex cuts easily. A quick example of this, having a connection in place. Selecting the plate itself, we have the edit boundary tool, and we are always able to then add additional features to the sketch itself, extending them where it needs to be. Finishing off the sketch, you can then select also your bolts. So again, by initializing them in place, you do have instance parameters, which depending on the amount of bolts needed, it starts to change, and the distancing between the bolts, having them in place. So again, quick ways of editing your steel connections. Electrical circuit naming. So in Revit 2021, circuit naming schemes enable you to tailor the way that the circuit number property of a circuit and devices is defined. You can assign a default circuit naming scheme for your model by selecting a scheme in the By Project Circuit Naming Scheme dropdown. Use a circuit naming instance parameter to assign a circuit naming scheme. The By Project Circuit Naming Scheme is used when the panel's instance parameter is set to By Project. So this is a great way to follow different types of naming conventions for your circuits, depending on the project that you're working with. So now this could be customized per project or even per schedule itself and graphics. So with the schemes themselves, where you're going to be creating them is in the MEP settings underneath the electrical settings portion. So you do have now circuit naming. Here you could create different types of styles for the circuit naming within your projects. So we could always select these, and here you can see different parameters that can be always added into those options. Again, we could always add in the ways and renaming it. So we could always have this as a naming convention. So now as a new item to be used, when you are adding or when you are modifying your different elements in your project, based off of the panels themselves, when you select those objects and you go into the properties, you do have the naming conventions that can be from the circuit naming option. If you click the drop down, we can now see the new type that can be created specifically to the project and to the graphical representations in it. Switchboard circuit phasing selection. So inside of Revit 2021, there is a new command for the switchboard panel schedule view labeled switch phases. With this enhancement, the phase that the circuits are connected to can be toggled and the loads on the switchboard bus update accordingly. This makes it possible for users to specify what phase a load connected to in Revit. A nice feature for now MEP. So MEP Worksharing. Worksharing with MEP elements has been improved to enable better collaboration among team members and provide a more consistent experience across Revit. Prior to Revit 2021, users may have experienced the following issues: deadlocks or synchronizing loops with other users. For example, user 1 can't sync with Central until user 2 syncs, but user 2 can't sync with Central until user 1 synchronizes. A user cannot open their local copy of the model. You would get the error message, "You do not have permission to edit the element," displays, and the central model may need to be recreated. Pipes and ducts may unintentionally extend and overlap each other, or they may be removed after synchronizing with the central model. Starting with Revit 2021, there are two major changes to the behavior when you make modifications to the model. These changes apply to native Revit generic MEP elements and to MEP fabrication parts. So the first one is when you move a run of duct, pipe, conduit, or cable tray, only the directly modified elements are checked out. Prior to Revit 2021, when you move a run of the duct, pipe, conduit, cable tray, or connected equipment or fixtures, all directly or indirectly modified elements were checked out. In Revit 2021, only the directly modified elements is checked out when you move a run, duct, pipe, conduit, cable tray, or connected equipment or fixtures. So a great way of not needing to synchronize over and over or taking ownership of all the elements when modifying. Number two, when you delete an inline element such as a valve or damper, ducts and pipes are not automatically reconnected. You can now use the trim extend command to reconnect two segments of a duct or pipe. It's another great feature that you could use within the work sharing environment. So with all these different features that Revit has as new features, but also enhancements, I'm going to pass this over to Peter, which he will show a new feature within Revit, so generative design. Peter, I'm going to pass this off to you.
All right, thank you very much, Patrick. I will show my screen. Okay, so within Revit 2021, there is now a new feature within the program called Generative Design. So that's found under the Manage tab we can actually go through and generate a bunch of new studies based on this. Generative design is used to quickly find out the most ideal circumstances for certain layouts, or you name it, as long as you can get, as long as you can have that kind of laid out within Dynamo yourself. So, and Dynamo again is a recurring feature that was in within Revit in the last few versions. So in order to create in order to actually utilize generative design, we're actually going to create a new study. So once we create a new study, we'll have an option between a couple different out-of-the-box options. So these are the ones down here, are all the ones that came with Revit when we initially installed it. But I did create an additional one just to kind of help show off what the program can do. My mistake. So in my case, I'm actually going to create something here for our PopCan. So I'm creating something for a PopCan to try and find out the exact radius to height ratio that I need to create the most efficient PopCan that I can for a particular volume. So if in my case, I'm going to create this PopCan, and so I have several different methods I can use to generate different options. The first one, the standard one that we're always going to get, is going to be optimize. Now, optimize will go through several different iterations and try and narrow down on the most efficient size of your PopCan. And in my case, the rules I set up are actually based on our surface area. So in my case, I have the surface area of my PopCan. I actually want to minimize this. Right? And I want to do all of this specified based on a particular volume. So I'm actually going to turn that off since I set my volume within Dynamo. But I want my radius to be able to fluctuate back and forth to kind of try and find out the actual the actual proper size. I could set constraints within for a minimum and a maximum if that is something that I wanted to do within our particular example. And down here, I actually have a section for generation settings. Now, within generative design, we are going to get both a population size and a number of generations. So what this is going to do is, for our first generation, we are actually going to get a population size of 20. And all of these are going to be randomly populated numbers for all of our chosen variables. In my case, I just have radius. So for each one of these, it's going to actually, once that I've populated all 20 of these generations, sorry, all 20 of these options, I'm going to then find the best ones, the ones that perform the best, and actually go on to our second generation. Now, the second generation is going to create another 20 options, all of which are going to use the best and brightest from the previous version to create our options for our next one. So so after several generations, we're going to find our most optimal design for this particular PopCan. So we could go through and just optimize what options we have, or we could go through and simply randomize what kind of all of our input. So we don't no longer worried about going through several different generations. Now we're just worried about, I just want a bunch of different options, and let me just pick and choose between them. What works best for me? Okay. I could also go through something and say like this. Now, like this will actually allow me to specify particular inputs, and will just give me particular outputs that are very close to my original inputs. Okay. And lastly, I also have cross product. Now, cross product, depending on the number of variations I'm allowed, I allow for each of my variables, will give me every single iteration, the number of outcomes is going to be all of these numbers multiplied together. So in my case, if I want 10 iterations for my radius, I'm going to try, and then 2 for my volume, I'm going to end up with a total of 20 different options I can come up with. Okay. So I'm going to show you two different options, both the optimized and the randomized. So I'm going to show you first off randomized for a specified volume, and I'm going to say generate this. Now this goes off into the next set of the next section of our generative design. In the background here, we can see where it said generative design. We started with creating a study. The next portion here is actually explore outcomes. So after a few moments of the computer kind of running through what all of these different options are, we're able to come up with various different options for all of those inputs. And in a moment, when this completes, we'll be able to actually navigate around all of our different options and see exactly which ones are going to be the most optimal. As you can see on the left side, this is our PopCan design, and it is actually giving me a couple different options. So in this case, I actually have 40 different options for my PopCan. Now, I could go through and just go through each and every single one and see exactly rotate around this particular PopCan and find exactly what that one looks like. Or I can take a look at our graph and specify, oh, I want a surface area that was somewhere between 500 and 600. This will actually allow me to narrow down. Our entire all of our designs to see only those particular ones. I could also change. I have all my surface area on my y-axis, so everything up along the side here. And then my x-axis is set to my radius, everything along the x-axis. And I can actually specify exactly, I can see all of those different designs and exactly where they fall along that line. So as my radius increases, I'm going to get, so does my surface area after a certain point. So if we find something in here, we actually see that around this area, around a radius of 3.61, we end up with the most optimal PopCan. But it's somewhere in this area is our most optimal design. And in this case, we're not able to see exactly which one it is. So this is our randomized PopCan study. The next one in line was actually the optimized PopCan. In this case, this is our PopCan, and we're going to try and optimize based on a particular volume. And in my case, that was 355 milliliters. I'm just going to do a population size of 10 to 10. Okay, it's going to try to give me 8 instead. If I generate this, it's going to find the exact, the most. Okay, that's interesting. In this case, it's going to try and generate the most optimal design based on my particular desired outcome. And in my case, that desired outcome was the lowest possible surface area. So after a few moments, this will come up with a single design. And that single design is going to have the most optimal area for our all of our outputs that we want. Now, all of these designs can actually be can be based on anything that we can think of. So if I want to generate a design that has the most amount of seating within a particular space, I can actually say maximize seating or maximize views to the outside, minimize distractions for certain things, optimize our walking distance to certain areas. We can easily do that using our generative design program. And in this case, I have a single design left over, and this actually gives me a radius of 3.84. So this is actually the most optimal design for our PopCAN. And at the very bottom here, once I choose, if I had certain a bunch of different elements, I could actually go over and create Revit elements based on those, depending on what type of designs I have. Now, within each of these, I will actually have to generate a Dynamo Graph to kind of work out all of the math for that. And just to kind of give you a quick example, I have my PopCAN design, my PopCAN graph, to kind of generate a particular graph, all of which is based on particular inputs and outputs. Give it a moment for Dynamo to load up. So this is, in this case, this is my my PopCAN graph, and I can have this on the far right side is actually my output for my surface area, and then I can also dump in my specified volume for my can, as well as a radius. So these become my constant or a variable for that. And I have a little bit of math on the inside to kind of figure out how to actually work all of this out. All right. So based on that, we can actually create different designs. Oops. So in this case, this is a design of the Mars Discovery District here in Toronto. In this case, we can actually see that there's several different designs have been mocked up for different placements of different areas, and we can actually specify exactly which type of constraints we like. And as we go through, we can actually specify. In this case, there were 5 different things to actually work with. So one was distraction, the adjacency bugs they were working with, daylight, views to the outside, and work style. So all of these were inputs that people tried to, or outputs that we're trying to get out of a particular graph and optimize for the best design possible. All right. With that, thank you all for joining us. And if you have any questions, please let us know, and we will endeavor to answer them for you.
Thanks, Peter and Patrick. I think we have one question here already. So somebody is wondering if, let's see, if it costs, if you have to purchase cloud credits for generative design.
Generative design does not, is all based on your, it's all run on your own computer. So you will not need to purchase cloud credits to run generative design. It's just a matter of creating a Dynamo Graph with the proper inputs and outputs, and then running that through the generative design that is available only in Revit 2021. Sorry, I should be clear. Revit 20, the generative design is only available if you have access to the full subscription package for the AEC collection. It is not available as a standalone Revit, although Dynamo is.
Okay, we have another one. It says, is row stripping already an option for panel schedules?
So Patrick here, row stripping is only for schedules. It's nothing for panel schedules as of yet. So to answer that, it's no, not for panel schedules.
Matt says, okay, thanks. And if anyone has any questions, definitely throw them in the chat box and we're here to answer. Okay, we have another one here that says, in schedules, can you shade them to be any color and style you want now? For example, more options than just alternating.
No, so the row stripping right now is just the alternating right now. It's not for specific ones. Shading them, so there's a conditional formatting, but that won't give you kind of the specific one. So row stripping is just per row and alternating row by row.
Okay, one more. It says, do you still require a third-party link in Excel? Sorry, do you still require a third-party to link in Excel?
So right now there is no native, so there is CTC, there is no native Excel import directly to Revit itself. Dynamo can be a tool that can be used with importing and exporting from Revit to Excel and back. CTC was just mentioned there as another tool that can be used, but as for a native tool directly from Revit, there is nothing there.
And if anyone doesn't feel comfortable putting their questions up in the chat box, you can always take down Patrick or Peter's email, or me as well, of course, and send your questions privately. Jay says, great job, guys. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, we can wrap this up a little bit early. And like I said, if anyone has anything else, you have our emails here up on the screen, so please contact us anytime. And thanks again for joining.